कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरि ओम।
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनम् देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाभूदितम्। लोके सज्जन षट्परैरहरः पीपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद् भारत पंकजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्र रुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः
Hari Om. So Bhagavan says, I shall teach you about me. About me meaning about Bhagavan. Completely and doubtlessly. Asamshayam Mam, which is doubtlessly, and Samagram Mam, completely. By giving knowledge as well as the means to make it or convert it into wisdom, which is experiential knowledge. And he starts by saying that his nature is twofold. Para Prakriti, which is the realm of the inert and is manifold, starting from the Prakriti or Maya in this case. When we say Prakriti here, we refer to Maya. The entire realm of both the inert and the sentient, the manifest and the unmanifest, including everything. And the other facet, which is Apara Prakriti, which is nothing but Chetana or consciousness. The inert and the sentient, Bhagavan says, are both me. And the cause for everything are these two. It is said, Prakarshena karoti karayati iti prakriti. Karoti is does, it does, which means it is the effect. And karayati is the cause, it enables. So that which is alive and that which is life itself, both are me. Now science says that every effect has to have a cause. And it traces the cause of creation right up to the point of the black hole. We have seen this earlier also. And science stops there. Actually, modern science has also talked about something called negative energy, which causes the black hole. But it stops there. Science also says that life is something which responds to stimuli. There has to be an external stimuli, and anything that responds to that external stimuli is life. Now, both these are limited definitions, limited by whatever science has been able to achieve up till this point in time. We have seen that science has progressed over years of humanity, of humans living. But as science gets beyond the planet Earth and deep inside the physical aspect of the human being, we don't know whether the current science is making more progress or the science, prehistorical science, which basically enabled man to become who we are today, made more progress. We don't know. But either way, it still has a long way to go. In Sanatana Dharma, contrarily, we call what is quote unquote lifeless as per science, which is the earth, which is our planet Earth, we call it Bhumi Devi. And the reason why planet Earth or a clod of earth, which is nothing but all clods, multi-billion clods of earth combined together make the planet Earth. And because it is considered lifeless, is probably why something like gold has more value compared to the clod of earth. Whereas Bhagavan has told us earlier that a person who is accomplished views gold and the clod of earth as the same, does not put higher value on one over the other. Unfortunately, man has done that, resulting in, we see where we have taken as human beings, planet Earth too. But in Sanatana Dharma, we call planet Earth Bhumi Devi. See the contrast and the difference. Bhagwan, a form of Bhagwan or a representation of Bhagwan. Imagine, like ants, we see ants all over. Imagine an ant climbing our leg, and thinking that, hey, this leg seems to be a new one. Let me explore it today. Like that, we explore our planet Earth. And not only our planet Earth, much beyond planet Earth also. It's fine to explore. We must explore. But at the same time, it will be much finer if we also understand that all that we are exploring are also that element of creation, that Bhagwan, and give it the due respect that it deserves. Another aspect that I would like to cover as part of the introduction is, see, darkness is no proof that there is no light. It only implies that the medium to reflect light is not there. Light is there, but the medium to reflect it, thereby giving that visibility, the vision, the sight, is not there. Similarly, consciousness manifests where there is mind, as much as light manifests where there is a reflective medium. And the mind is the instrument or the reflective medium that reflects consciousness. Consciousness itself is all pervasive. And the capacity of the mind, the subtler the mind, the purer the mind, the better the expression of consciousness. And Bhagavan says that his nature is eightfold. Now, Vedantic science has expounded this into manifold, describing the 24 elements of Prakriti, which we saw in the last satsang. And Bhagavan says that the very life element, Jiva Bhutam, and the Apara Prakriti, which is the entire world, the manifest and the unmanifest, all of that is upheld by the Para Prakriti, which is his higher expression. The higher expression is the Para Prakriti. Now, Bhagavan continues. We come to verse 6 of the 7th chapter.
एतद् योनीनि भूतानि
एतद्योनीनि भूतानि
सर्वानित्युपधारय
सर्वानित्युपधारय
अहं कृष्णस्य जगतः
अहं कृत्स्नस्य जगतः
प्रभव प्रलयस्तथा
प्रभव प्रलयस्तथा
एतद् योनीनि भूतानि सर्वानित्युपधारय अहं कृष्णस्य जगतः प्रभव प्रलयस्तथा
Sarvani Bhutani. Sarvani, all Bhutani beings. And Bhagavan says, Etad. Etad is these two. What is he referring to when he says these two? Both the manifest and the unmanifest. Both the inert and the sentient. And he says, Yonini, their source. Both the inert and the sentient is all of it. So, the source of all beings. Their cause. Ita yupya dharaya. Bhagavan says, understand in this manner. Understand. Thus, upadharaya means the understanding that comes from proximity. See, for example, we spoke about perseverance. Perseverance, for us to understand Mars better, we can understand Mars through telescopes. We can understand Mars without telescopes as that red dot, seeing through naked eye whenever it is visible. But to understand it better, you send a spaceship called Perseverance, a laboratory like we spoke last time, a microbiology lab, in the form of a space capsule to the planet. That proximity gives us a much deeper, much better, clearer understanding. That is Upadharaya, the understanding that comes from proximity. And Bhagavan says, Aham, I am, Prabhavaha, the source, the originator. And not only Prabhavaha, also Pralayasthatha, and the dissolver. The source or originator and the dissolver of what? Kritsnasya Jagataha, of the entire world. So all beings from Brahma to a tuft of grass to the coronavirus, like my hands probably have so many microorganisms that is equal to the population of planet Earth. So, or population, let us say, that's too much of an exaggeration. My hands have microorganisms that equal the population of the city Bangalore, the number of people in Bangalore. That many, all of this, everything have their origin in these two prakritis of Bhagavan, the para prakriti and the apara prakriti. They are aggregated forms of the self and of inanimate matter. And because they originate in his two prakritis, they belong to him. And he himself is the origin and dissolution of the entire universe. That is what Bhagavan says here. That I am the Karana, I am the cause. Karana is something that enables something else to come into being, to exist, to dissolve. In that sense, it is called Shrishti Karana and Laya Karana. Shrishti Karana, that which enables coming into being. Laya Karana, that which enables dissolution. The cause for the origin and the cause for the dissolution. And Bhagavan says that he is both of them. The other element of Karana is Nimitta Karana and Upadana Karana. Efficient cause and material cause. Material cause is something that pervades the effect. So cause is the reason for the effect coming into being. And if the cause itself pervades the effect, that is material cause. And when the effect is dissolved, when the effect goes away, it merges back into the cause. That is material cause. For example, if you take a pot, a clay pot, the clay is the material cause for the pot. And when it dissolves, that pot goes back into the clay. Every time I say this, I remember that, I don't remember the name of the movie, but in some movie, Kajol breaks the expensive pot of Amitabh Bachchan and says Gamla. You know, that every time I, go through this, I remember that. So when the Gamla breaks, it becomes clay again. That is material cause. Efficient cause is something that causes visioning, that is caused by the visioning, or that causes the visioning and the making. But it does not pervade into what is being created. So in this example, the potter is the efficient cause, while clay is the material cause. This is a very famous example in Sanatana Dharma and in Vedanta. So Bhagavan says that he is both the potter and the clay through the agencies of para prakriti and apara prakriti. That being the case, because of which, therefore, we come to a very simple and beautiful verse of the Bhagavad Gita. We go to verse 7.
Matta parataram nanyat
Matta parataram nanyat
kinchidasti dhananjaya
kinchidasti dhananjaya
mai sarvamidam prottam
Mai sarvamidam prottam
sutre manigananiva
Sutre maniganaiva
matta parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam prottam sutre maniganaiva.
So Bhagavan says, Kinchidasti nanyat. There is nothing, there is none. Parataram, higher. Mattaha, than me. O Dhananjaya. Dhananjaya is reference for Arjuna. And he says, Mai sarvamidam prottam. Sarvamidam, all of this entire variety, the manifest, unmanifest, everything, right from that tuft of grass to coronavirus to everything that we see, Brahman, Brahma, from there to the small little things, organisms, all the variety. Prottam is strung, Mai, in me. Sutre manigana iva. Iva means just like. Manigana is a collection of gems. Sutre, on a string. So just like beads of gems are strung together by the string, all this variety in creation, everything put together is strung by me, and me, I am the sutra. What a beautiful verse this is. Each bead in a garland is different from each other. Okay, whether you take gems, whether you take flowers, whatever you take, it's different from each other. And a beautifully strung garland, you will not see the string. The string is invisible. So Bhagavan says that even though the string is invisible, it is strung through all the beads, individual beads, which are different from each other. Similarly, the hidden consciousness strings all beings together, holding everything together, weaving everything together in this cosmic string. Our gotras may be different, but our sutra is the same. And that sutra is Bhagavan. In our endeavor to get familiar with all the sutras that we study, right? The Jnana Sutra, Sankhya Sutra, Vatsyayana Sutra, Yoga Sutra, Ayurveda Sutra, all of that, and so on and on. We must know that one sutra. What is that sutra? Sutre Maniganaiva, Bhagavan. And Bhagavan says that the gems are me and the string is me. Both are me. Going deeper now, Bhagavan continues. We will recite both verses 7.8 and 9 together.
Rasohamapsu kaunteya
Rasohamapsu kaunteya
Prabhasmi shashi suryayoho
Prabhasmi shashi suryayoho
Pranava sarva vedeshu
Pranava sarva vedeshu
Shabdhake paurusham rishu
Shabdhakke paurusham rishu
Punyo gandha prativyam cha
Punyo gandha pritivyam cha
Tejaschasmi vibhavasau
Tejaschasmi vibhavasau
Jivanam sarva bhuteshu
Jivanam sarva bhuteshu
Tapaschasmi tapavishu
Tapaschasmi tapasvishu
Rasohamapsu kaunteya Prabhasmi shashi suryayoho Pranava sarva vedeshu Shabdake paurusham rishu Punyo gandha prativyam cha Tejaschasmi vibhavasau Jivanam sarva bhuteshu Tapaschasmi tapasvishu.
Tapasvishu. So, rasaha is the taste, the sapidity. And Bhagavan says, apsu, in water. See that beautiful taste of water, pure water, that we all relish. You know, for example, when you drink water here in the city and then you go to the mountains and you get the spring water and you say, oh, wow, how tasty it is. You don't need to filter it, right? That taste, that rasa in water. And Bhagavan here is addressing Arjuna as Kunti's son, Kaunteya. Whenever he wants to bring in that brethren, that feeling of fondness, he calls him Kaunteya. So he says that I am that rasa in water. I am that beautiful, pure taste of water. And he says, Prabhasmi Shashi Surya Yoho. Shashi is moon, Surya is sun. I am the Prabha, the light in the moon and the sun. And then he says, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. In all the Vedas, everything put together, all scriptures, I am the Om. And Shabda Ke, Kha, Keche Kha. Kha is space. In space, I am the sound, Shabdaha. And Paurusham Nrishu. Nrishu is people. In all the people, I am the Paurusha, the physical energy in the people. So he says, O son of Kunti, and he continues, Punyo Gandha. Punya, sweet. Here Punya refers to sweet. I am the sweet fragrance in what? Prithivyam, in the earth, in that clod of earth, that sweet fragrance. And Tejas Chasmi Vibhavasau. Vibhavasau is fire. Tejas is the brilliance. I am the brilliance in the fire. Sarva Bhuteshu, Jivanam Sarva Bhuteshu, in all beings I am life. And in the tapasvis, that is in the austere people, I am tapas itself, I am austerity. So Bhagavan says, so look at this verse, and he is addressing Arjuna as Kaunteya. O Kaunteya, please listen. I am the sapidity, the pleasant taste in waters. I am the light in the moon and the sun. I am the syllable Om in all the Vedas. I am the sound in space. I am the physical energy in people. I am the sweet fragrance in earth, the brilliance in fire, the life in all beings, and I am the austerity in the austere. This is a beautiful verse, and we will dwell on this a little bit, on both these verses. See, we saw earlier that how scientifically Bhagavan explained and described his varied nature and the process of creation. So a quick recap, okay? From Prakriti, Maya, comes Buddhi. And from Buddhi comes Ahankara, or ego. And we saw that all these three are Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. From the Sattva part of Ahankara come the Jnanendriya, the faculties of, we have to remember the faculties of sound, sight, smell, taste, touch, the 5 faculties. They come from Sattva. From Rajas comes the Karmendriyas, the faculty of grasping, speech, locomotion through the legs, excretion and reproduction. They are the Karmendriyas. And we have to remember that these are the faculties, okay? Not the hands, legs, voice box themselves, or not the eyes, ears, tongue, not the sense organs or organs of. The sense organs and organs of action are different. Their faculties, what enables them to do what they do. They come from Rajas. And the elements that are in their subtle form, they are the Tanmatras. And Tanmatras come from Tamas. We saw all of this, okay? So I'm just doing a quick recap. Elements in the gross form are an admixture of various other elements. But elements in the subtle form or pure form are Tanmatra. The Manas comes from the Sattva and Rajas Ahankara, and it controls the Jnanendriya and Karmendriya. And from the Tanmatras come the Pancha Mahabhuta, Akasha or space or ether, Vayu or air, Agni or fire, Jala or water, and Prithvi or earth. We saw this earlier. Now in these 2 verses, Bhagavan shows us how he is the very essence of creation. Earlier he described this process of creation. Now he tells us that he is the very essence of creation. Take anything, or take everything, and see what is it, what is that, because of which this thing that you have taken is that thing. So take something, and what is it because of which it is what it is? Bhagavan says, that is me. That essence which enables the being of anything, any being, the thingness of anything, that enabler is me. And it's beautiful the way science and philosophy also have examined this. So I'll now digress a little bit to give some examples, right? The subjective or qualitative properties of experience, these are called qualia, Q-U-A-L-I-A, like the singular is qualis. Like remember the Toyota Qualis? what it feels like experientially to see a red rose is very different from what it feels like to see a yellow rose. We all understand this, right? Hearing a musical note that is played on a violin is very different from hearing the exact same musical note played on a mandolin. The qualia of these experiences are what give each of these that characteristic feel and make them what they are, distinct from the other. The note from a mandolin is distinct from the note of a violin, even though it is the same note. The qualia is what gives that characteristic difference. So let us see, I'm going to take an interesting case study or case of this girl called Nidhi, brilliant color scientist. Okay, the story goes that Nidhi is imprisoned in a black and white room. Just imagine as I'm speaking, okay, she's imprisoned in a black and white room. Never having been permitted to leave it, she acquires information about the outside world through various black and white sources. She gets all the information about everything, but it's all black and white. So she knows about how the world is through black and white. What is happening, black and white. Through books, through black and white television, there are multiple cameras that are fitted outside externally to her room, which feed in, whatever is happening outside, but everything in black and white. The traffic, the birds flying, whatever it is she sees, everything in black and white. So basically, she's acquiring everything that we are acquiring roaming around in the world, but because she's been imprisoned by her captors in a black and white room, she gets to know all that we get to know in black and white. Including what? Including the aspect of color and vision. How do you see color and how do you visualize that color? That also she gets to know through black, but it is black and white. So what a funny situation, right? So all the information, as much of information is made possible to her. So eventually Nidhi becomes the world's leading authority on these matters, because she probably is reading and acquiring much more than all of us do sitting in that room. Only difference is that it is all black and white. But still she wonders to herself, what do people outside experience when they see colors? What is it like for them to see red or green? She keeps wondering this. One fine day, the captors release her and Nidhi walks out of her room into this beautiful garden that is full of flowers. Nice, lush green garden full of varied different colors of flowers. And then she says, wow, aha, this is what it is. This is how, she knows what a rose is. She knows what red is. Oh, this is a red rose. She knows what yellow is. She knows what a rose is. This is a yellow rose. This is green grass. All of this she sees and experiences for the first time. And so on and so forth. Now, how is it that Nidhi is making these amazing discoveries? See, she knew everything, no? Why is it that it appears as if she's finding out things that she had no clue about? How can that be? Remember, all the physical aspects of information. She knew what red rose was. About color, vision, everything. This is because there is this realm of subjective, phenomenal qualities that are associated with all elements of creation. And obviously with color also. And that is the intrinsic nature which now Nidhi discovers. Only after she has been set free. Only after she has experienced the real stuff. Inside the room, she had the knowledge of the objective aspect, the physical basis of the subjective qualities. So she knew about green, but she didn't know what green was like. She knew about the cause and the effect. She knew about the similarities and dissimilarities. But only when she walks out is when she actually experiences it. The aparoksha jnana. Earlier, she had only the Paroksha Jnana. So Bhagavan gives us this knowledge of the subjective qualities in themselves, in all the things themselves. Long before this qualia was thought about. What I described now in the Nidhi experiment and all of that is part of the qualia aspect. The subjective elements, the tanmatra, from which the objective elements, the Pancha Mahabhuta, come. So going into this verse, Bhagavan basically is teaching us pure taste or rasa is tanmatra jala or water. And jala or water comes from taste or rasa. That's what Bhagavan says, raso hamapsu. Raso hamapsu kaunteya. That's how he starts, right? These two verses. So basically he's saying that this pure taste or rasa is tanmatra jala, is the element from which jala comes. Similarly, pure light or color. See, rainbow is color, right? So color, rainbow is light, correct? Colors come from light. So pure light or pure color is rupa, or rupa is tanmatra agni or fire. And agni or fire comes from pure light or color or rupa. Bhagavan says, Prabhasmi Sashi Surya Yoho. I am the light in the sun and the moon. Pure sound or shabda is tanmatra akasha or space. And akasha or space comes from sound or shabda. Shabdaha ke is what Bhagavan says. Pure smell or gandha is tanmatra prithvi. And prithvi or earth comes from pure smell or gandha. Punyo gandha prithivyam. And pure sensation or touch or sparsha is tanmatra vayu or air. And vayu, air, comes from touch or sparsha. Now we may wonder that Bhagavan has not in Sanskrit put that term, the last one. Has he not touched upon sparsha? Pun intended. Right? Sparsha is touch. So Bhagavan, we may wonder, has not touched upon sparsha. But this is covered by the various examples that he uses in these two verses. Which are those? One, Om touching all the Vedas. Pranavaha sarva Vedeshu. The physical energy that gives sensation to all people. Paurusham Rishuhu. The brilliance that touches all forms of light. Tejas Chasmi Vibhavasau. The life that sensitizes, gives sensitivity to all beings. Jivanam Sarva Bhuteshu. And the austerity that touches the austere. Tapaschami Tapasvishu. So all that is representative of the sparsha. We can think of, across all the 5 elements of creation, we can think of infinite examples, as many examples as we want. Bhagavan has given us a few, but he has given us few which kind of touch everything else beautifully. That's one thing about Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Whenever he teaches and gives examples, he does it in such a way that very few questions arise. And even if they arise, they are answered later on. And when he gives examples, they are root examples, which kind of expand to cover everything else. So here the examples that Bhagavan is giving, even if we start thinking of various other examples, they will somehow or the other fall under these umbrellas. And Bhagavan basically says that the unalloyed, the uncombined, the unsullied, the pure element, the Shuddha, Pavana, the Punya, the pure in all elements, because of which the element is what it is, that, please know, O Kaunteya, is me. And then he continues in verse 10.
Bijam mam sarva bhutanam.
Bijam mam sarva bhutanam.
Viddhi partha sanatanam.
Viddhi partha sanatanam.
Buddhir buddhimatamasmi.
Buddhir buddhimatamasmi.
तेजस्तेजस्विनामहम्
तेजस्तेजस्विनामहम्
बीजं मां सर्वभूतानां विद्धि पार्थ सनातनं बुद्धिर्बुद्धिमतामस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विनामहम्.
See, Bhagavan had just said, Jivanam Sarvabhuteshu. He has just said that. The very life that sensitizes all beings, that is me. Now he is saying, Bijam Mam Sarvabhutanam. I am the seed of all beings. And he qualifies that. Sanatanam, the eternal seed. And please know this, O Partha, Viddipartha. So each being, we know this, right? Every single thing, every being comes from its own seed. But there is that one indestructible seed, Sanatana seed, that remains when other beings and other seeds perish. They are all destroyed. And Bhagavan says, that is me, Prakriti. Bhagavan then, which is coming, he appears to be saying, do you understand this? So he says, know this, O Partha. Now he says, he appears to be saying, do you understand this, Partha? And through Partha to all of us, do you understand this? Yes, you do. Then he says, Buddhir Buddhi Matamasmi. That intelligence because of which you are understanding this, that intelligence is me. The intelligence of the intelligent is me. So I have told you all of this, Partha. I have described creation process to you. Then I have told you the essence of creation. I have told you how the elements of creation come through the essence. Have you understood all that? Very nice. You are intelligent. That intelligence is me. And then he says, because of this intelligence, because of this understanding, you are shining so brightly. That brilliance is me. Tejas Tejasvinamaham. That brilliance is also me. The brilliance of the brilliant is me. So Bhagavan, this is beautiful. Bhagavan is putting all the aspects of worship in place. Remember, in this chapter, we are learning about the nature of Bhagavan and we are learning about devotion. We started off with that, remember? So he's putting all the aspects of worship in place. In the last verse of chapter 6, he had said, Madgatenantaratmana. The one whose innermost self is fixed in me. That is what he had said at that time. Here, he is teaching us how to look at the innermost being in all beings. So with your innermost self, look at the innermost essence of all beings. And when we do that, we are basically, in Bhagavan completely. Mahakavi Bharatiyar composed a beautiful devotional melody that signifies this. It's a beautiful song. And I have requested my mother and niece who are here with me to sing that for us. Then we will continue. Okay. So I'm just going to, yeah, there they are.
Okay. Kakashiraginile Nandalala Ninjan Kariyaniram Tondudaye Nandalala Kakashiraginile Nandalala Ninjan Kariyaniram Tondudaye Nandalala Parkumarangal Yellam Nandalala Nindran Pachai Niram Tondrudaye Nandalala Parkumarangal Yellam Nandalala Nindran Pachai Niram Tondrudaye Nandalala Kettumoliyellam Nandalala Nindran Geetamishay Kudada Nandalala Kettumoliyellam Nandalala Nindan Geetamishay Kudada Nandalala தீக்குள் விரலை வைத்தால் நந்தலாலா நின்னை தீண்டும் இன்பம் தோன்றுதடா நந்தலாலா. தீக்குள் விரலை வைத்தால் நந்தலாலா நின்னை தீண்டும் இன்பம் தோன்றுதடா நந்தலாலா. காக்க சிறகினிலே நந்தலாலா நின்றன் கரிய நிறம் தோன்றுதையே நந்தலாலா. காக்க சிறகினிலே நந்தலாலா.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a beautiful song. It's in Tamil, very similar to the Hindi song that I had sung earlier in terms of what it implies. But what a beautiful song. You know, it basically means, so like I said, is it Mahakavi Bharatiyar who composed this song and put it into beautiful melody. Nandalala, we all know, the favorite of Nanda. The favorite of Nanda, Sri Krishna. So Bharatiyar is saying, in the black feathers of a crow, I see your black face, O darling Lord. In the green expanse of nature, I see your green face, O pleasant Lord. In every song I hear, O sweet Lord, I am able to hear your sweet voice. And even if I put my finger in the flame of fire, I feel your form touching me, O brilliant Lord. So those are the 8 verses or 4 verses of the song. Beautiful. So in everything, in the essence, take anything, take everything, see what is the reason for that being's being, its existence. In that you find Bhagavan. That is him. An atheist father is sending his son to school for the first time. And he's very worried because, you know, if you go to school and there they will do prayers and all that, right? In the morning, most schools do have that he'll become a believer. So after a few days, once his son has started learning and all that, even though he's been telling him, you know, about atheism, after a few days when the son has started learning how to read, the father writes on a board and asks the son to read. The father has written, God is nowhere. But this poor kid, the son is reading it. The son has learned to read letter by letter. The son reads God, God, IS is, NOW now, HERE here. So even if you say God is nowhere, he manifests there, wherever that nowhere is. Take every object and learn the art of seeing Bhagwan in that object. In that way, discover God. In the Rudra section of the Vedas, it says that Bhagwan is the foremost and he's the best in everything, of everything. And a part of that Rudra reads, Stena Nam Pataye. Stena Nam Pataye. Which means God is the Pati of all thieves. Stena means thief. Now, if every thief thinks that the foremost in his profession is Bhagwan, and he should emulate Bhagwan in stealing, rest assured that over a period of time he would stop stealing. And now Bhagwan continues, 11th verse.
Balam balavatam chaham.
Balam balavatam chaham.
Kamaraga vivarchitam.
Kamaraga vivarjitam.
Dharma viruddho bhuteshu.
Dharma viruddho bhuteshu.
Kamosmi bharatarshava.
Kamosmi bharatarshava.
Balam balavatam chaham. Kamaraga vivarjitam. Dharma viruddho bhuteshu. Kamosmi bharatarshava.
So Bhagavan says, Aham, I am, Balam, the strength, Balavatam, of the strong. So the strength of the strong is me. But he quickly hastens to add, he adds a caveat, cha kamaraga vivarjitam, devoid of desire and attachment. The strength that is totally free of kama and raga. Varjitam is free. Vivarjitam is totally free, completely free. So the strength that is free of kama and raga, that strength is me. Now raga is that element that one is enjoying, and because of that enjoyment does not want it to perish, does not want it to go away. It is born out of ignorance. And hence it is tamasic in nature. Ignorance because it must perish. We all know everything perishes. We ourselves perish. So it has to perish and it will perish. But the enjoyer ignorantly believes that it won't. That is raga. In fact, holds on to it desperately when it is going away. That is raga. And it is tamasic in nature. Kama is born out of want, desire. And hence it is rajasic in nature. The biggest strength is the strength of desirelessness. And there are so many examples that we have seen in our life. See, when Mahatma Gandhi set off for the Dandi March, he didn't even bother to see, he didn't aspire to become a leader. He just believed in the cause and he started walking. The frail old man with his walking stick, started walking. Took a pinch of salt in his fist and started walking. He didn't have any desire. He didn't have anything that he wanted to hold on to. He actually didn't, by the way. To digress a little bit, once somebody asked Gandhiji, why are you wearing, such meager clothes, hardly anything? Oh, Gandhiji said, the king is wearing more than enough for both of us put together. So there was nothing that he was anyway holding on to. There was no raga. And there was no kama. So he just believed, driven by purpose, driven by a sense of duty, not driven by kama and raga, driven by dharma, swadharma. He started walking and the entire nation followed. In fact, when he was arrested after the Dandi March and he was brought in front of the magistrate stood up, British officer, stood up. And he said, and I quote, he said, this is an unusual case in which I have to proclaim judgment on someone who is greater than me, than I am. So this strength that comes from desirelessness is the strongest strength that anybody can get. There is the story of Angulimala, and how Angulimala was transformed by Gautama Buddha. So Angulimala was this, dacoit and plunderer and murderer. And to celebrate all his victories, people who he killed, he chopped off their finger and created a mala out of it. And he used to wear that with pride. And once he was walking, when Buddha was walking in the village, everybody was running away. And Buddha said, what's happening? They told him about Angulimala. And Buddha said, hey, this person I must see. Who is this? And with courage, he walked towards Angulimala, whereas everybody else was running away from him. And when he saw Angulimala was very angry that Buddha was seemingly unafraid of him. But Buddha asked him, why are you doing this? What are you going to get out of it? What is the purpose of you doing it? How do you become stronger by doing this? What is it that everybody is running away from you from? And he said, you are a person to be loved. And for the first time ever, Angulimala had heard this thing about, what is this love? Buddha explained what is the sense of affection and love. And he said, you deserve to be loved. For the first time, Angulimala felt that somebody actually cares for him. He had never had that sensation earlier. And that slowly converted him from the demon that he was into a follower, into a spiritual person. So the think about the courage that Buddha had to have to face this person. That courage, that strength. Where did that strength come from? From Kama Raga Vivarjitam. When you don't have attachment, or when you're not holding on desperately to something, Buddha here was not even holding on desperately to his own life. If it had to go, if he had to become the 100th finger in Angulimala's chain, fine. That also would have been the sutra, no? With the gems. So Buddha was okay with that. And that courage, that strength transformed Angulimala. So this power of those without Kama and Raga is me, O Arjuna. And then Bhagavan continues, so that we all don't think Kama is not a demon. Angulimala is a demon. Kama is not a demon. So in order not to demonize desire, as compared to no Kama and no Raga, Bhagavan says, no Raga. Bhagavan says, Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatar sabha. Dharma viruddho kama. Dharma viruddho kama is to be read together. Dharma viruddho kama is that kama, that desire that is not viruddha to dharma. The kama that is not a virodhi of dharma. The kama that is aligned to dharma. That kama, that desire which does not transgress the rules of righteousness. That desire is me, Bhagavan says. Thus, he says that desire is okay. Remember, we talked about mumukshu. It also came as a question once, that we are saying that there should be no desire. What about the desire to be spiritual? The desire for Lord, mumukshutva. How can I be madgate nantaratmana without having that love for Bhagavan? That mumukshutva, that desire leads to desirelessness also. That desire is me, Bhagavan says. And then he continues in verse 12.
Ye chaiva satvika bhava.
Ye chaiva satvika bhava.
Rajasastamasaschaye.
Rajasatamashaschaye.
Matta eviti tan vidhi.
Matta eveti tan vidhi.
Natvaham teshu te mayi.
Natvaham teshu te mayi.
Ye chaiva satvika bhava. Rajasastamasaschaye. Matta eviti tan vidhi. Natvaham teshu te mayi.
Ye cha iva. Whatever more, whatever in addition, all the beings, everything. So Bhagavan is basically, ensuring that it's actually all encompassing. So if by chance, if there is something else additionally left also, that also. So everything put together. Satvika bhavaha, that which has pure nature. Pure nature, viveka, vairagya, and so on. That which is rajasa, active in nature. Kama, krodha, lobha, mada, matsarya. That which is tamasaha, dull in nature. Delusion, shoka, moha, and so on. So whatever their nature or mental state may be, everything and all of it put together, Bhagavan says, Matta eveti tan vidhi. Know them to have arisen from me. How beautiful is that? Everything has arisen from me. So my Guruji, Swami Advayanandaji, was meditating in Gangotri. This was like 25, 26, 27 years ago, meditating in Gangotri. And one thought, some thought, he didn't share what thought, some thought kept coming back to him again and again and again to his mind, preventing him from getting into meditation. The more he tried to eliminate that thought, remove that thought from his mind, the more dominant it became. Finally, Swamiji realized or decided that he needed help. He was staying in this ashram called Ishavasyam Ashram in Gangotri. It's a beautiful ashram. So he was staying there and he decided to seek help from the Mukhya Swamiji, the presiding Swamiji of the ashram. And he went and confided in him, saying, I'm trying to meditate, but this thought is coming, dominating my mind, coming back again and again, preventing me from getting into meditation. Swamiji, the Pramukh Swamiji, he recited this verse of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita and said to Advayananda ji, he said, look at that thought. Let that thought come. Look at that thought that refuses to go away as one that is growing in the garden of God. Quote unquote, he said this. Look at the thought that refuses to go away as one that is growing in the garden of God. Swamiji sincerely did this and the thought went away. Even if he tried to forcibly bring the thought back, he's trying to think about it and bring it back. It refuses to come back. It would not return. Everything grows in the garden of Bhagavan. And at the same time, Bhagavan says, Natvaham teshu te mai. This is a beautiful phrase. Natvaham teshu te mai. Na tu aham. Indeed, I am not. Teshu, in them. Te mai. They are in me. So this implies that the Paraprakriti, the higher nature of Bhagavan, is never affected by the Aparaprakriti, the lower nature of Bhagavan. The lower nature of Bhagavan is in the higher nature of Bhagavan, not me in them. Natvam teshu te mai. This is one important part of Bhagavad Gita that we should remember. Thus, Bhagavan teaches us how to meditate upon him. However, does the world understand him in this manner that Bhagavan has taught us? That we shall see in the next satsang. Thank you very much. Hari Om. Any thoughts, questions, comments? We have another 20 minutes. So
We'll repeat the verses and
yes, we'll repeat the verses and then go.
so today's verses from 6 to 12 of chapter 7. Etat yonini bhutani sarvanityupadharaya aham krishnasya jagatah prabhava pralayastata patta parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam prottam sutri manigana iva yasohamapsu kaunteya prabhasmi shashi suryayoh pranavah sarvavedishu shabdake paurusham rushu punyo gandha pritivyam cha tejaschasmi vibhavasau jivanam sarvabhuteshu tapaschasmi tapasvishu Bijam mam sarva bhutanam vidhi partha sanatanam buddhi buddhimatam asmi tejas tejas namaham balam balavatam chaham kamaraga vivarshitam dharma viruddho ishu kamosmi bharatashava ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasaschaye matta eviti tan vidhi natvaham teshu te mayi. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om purnamada purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate nasya purnamadaya purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om. Thank you. Any thoughts, questions, and comments?
It was a good experience to listen to you.
Thank you, Tanuja ji. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to learn through you all.
One question. This episode of Angulimala. Now he's killed 99, huh?
Huh?
And then he develops love for God.
Huh.
So how does that kind of life justify? I mean, you can't be appreciating him, no, for not killing the 100th.
By the
And
way,
then they also say like that this I saw in a movie recently that I don't know, there's a movie called Puglet. Is in that movie they say that they have to go and do the Visarjan of the last ashes of a person, and they say that even one single part of the body, if it is put in Ganga, sare paap dhul jate hain. How can we justify life which has led, I mean, the way it has, that person has led the life, and just because towards the end or in the mid of the life he attains, you know, this kind of love for God, does not justify.
actually, you know, Angulimala, we say, and Buddha transformed him. Before that, we have the example of Parashurama, the one who had so much anger, and so there are lots of such examples in our mythology. You know, where there are examples of how a person who has led a life of adharma then gets transformed. And that is a learning for people who are leading a life of adharma. So look at it that way, right? See, every creature, every being, every element, Bhagavan says, comes from me, from him. That's what Bhagavan says, right? Everything comes, the good, bad, the good. That's why I used coronavirus. Coronavirus is also come from him and is also him. One element of Paraprakriti, Aparaprakriti. It is the Aparaprakriti. So even the worst of human, even Angulimala is Aparaprakriti. Even his nature, the bad nature is Aparaprakriti. So that's what Bhagavan says here also. All the Sattvic, the Rajasic, the Tamasic. See, a lot of the quote-unquote wicked deeds emerge from Rajasic nature, or a combination of Rajasic and Tamasic nature. Tamasic because of ignorance, and Rajasic action orientation. So the combination of Rajasic and Tamasic leads to wickedness. Bhagavan says, they have come from me. That's what he says. So when everything is him, he gives everyone that chance to become Sattvic and finally to realize. So every element of creation gets that opportunity to realize. And please, one more thing, remember, it's a soul journey. It is not that Angulimala was born and died and he was the be-all and all. There is no be-all and all. So so by the way, it is also said that Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, and Mahabali, all they were Dwarpalakas in Bhagavan Vishnu's Vaikunta, or they are Dwarpalakas, and they did something because of which, as a punishment, Bhagavan gave them a choice. You know, do you want to be a good human being and have 100 lives on planet Earth, or would you like to be a bad human being and have one life? They all chose that one life. They said, we would like to come back to you. The sooner we come back to you, the better. So please make us bad human beings. We'll finish that off quickly and come back. So every element of creation ultimately realizes the moksha. Every aspect, every element, every nature, every human being. So don't know whether Angulimala realized it in that birth. Maybe it was the next birth. See, Bhagavan says, no, earlier we saw in chapter 6, that based on your journey, you will take rebirth either in the house of a prosperous and divine person, or in the house of a saint. Like we had studied the example of Vivekananda and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, right? So every journey is a journey that is continued for life after life. So the story about Swami struggling to keep away the specific thought and finally succeeding and letting it be with God, it is true for all our actions. As we dedicate and leave everything with Bhagavan, life becomes simpler. Yeah, but just 1 second. So the previous one, I think we have any other thought or comment on that previous point. But yeah, that's what it is, you know. So in this manifestation, that person may have appeared with those qualities, but in that soul journey, it is a journey that is woven together across many lives, and that enables the person either to realize ultimate moksha, or at least Jivan Mukti, if not Videha Mukti.
Hi.
Just 1 second, Nipun. So yeah, absolutely, I agree. You know, I think we'll all agree with Anupama's point about that she's kind of linking the Swamiji's story of struggling to do away with one thought, and then finally, once that is what Ishvara Arpanam is. Once he was able to absolutely sincerely, do Ishvara Arpanam, then that thought went away. That's what it is. Similarly, as we dedicate and leave everything in Ishvara Arpanam, life will become simpler. Absolutely right. Yeah. That's what Ishvara Arpanam is. Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. Yeah, Nipun.
Yeah, hi Srini. So just one comment on Upasana's question. Then I have a question. So the comment is like, I don't know if it's a good analogy, but I was thinking about fitness, right? Say I'm eating a lot of sugar and unhealthy food and I become obese. But eventually, say I go fit and I'm like doing my exercise and eating well, I become fit, right? So
No, not taken. Sorry.
Yeah, that is true. See,
you
just what you said, Nipun, is physical fitness.
Yeah.
The body fitness. Similarly, there is mind fitness. You train your mind for so many things. Meditation is one way to train your mind to become fitter and more accomplished. There is intellect fitness. And this Angulimala or Upasana story was about soul fitness. How the soul becomes more fitter to embrace the feet of the Lord.
There's another thing to it, though I don't know, it's not related really, but we see the person who is bad and who is turning out to be good, we really appreciate that person. I mean, this is general. But for the people who are already doing good, we don't even look at them. I think it's a learning to appreciate people who are actually in that form already, in that frame of thought already. We should appreciate those people.
Sure. In fact, Vasudha has just said what you touched upon also, where she says repenting for one's bad deed and changing oneself should be appreciated. Right? So you are saying not only repenting and changing oneself from bad to good should be appreciated, good should be appreciated.
Yeah.
See, good is taken for granted also. Right?
It is a part of literally everyday life. Even in our work place, it's like somebody who is really lethargic and he'll finally come out and do something good, and then that person is, oh, look at him. But the people who are already working so hard and doing well and in the job also, they are not even looked at. They're taken for granted. So it's a learning. That's what I'm saying. It's a learning that we we must appreciate people while they are doing good deeds and good job.
See,
That's
there
how
are
it
two
should.
things here. One is two comments on your comment. One is that about the person who is actually in a corporation or in a job, in an office, you will find that one is really doing great work, will be taken for granted, possibly is being taken for granted, but more and more is given to that person. That person is overworked also. The more you do, the more you get. Okay. Like sometimes the more you ask questions, the more you are also given the job. So the other thing is that also one should be in today's work environment, actually, see, there is a lot of misconception. People may think they are doing a great job, but that may be an individual opinion. Is it really a great job? That one has to also, it's up to the individual to answer that question. That is also very, very important. The third thing is, see, in life often you never know. You work hard at one place, you receive at other place. Okay,
Yes.
that happens all the time.
Yes, that
You
happens.
never guarantee that the place, the organization where you worked hard is where you will get back also. It may be some other organization.
Very true. We have experienced that.
The relationship in which you work hard, you may not get what you want, but you will get in some other relationship.
Other relationships. Very true.
Yeah, Nipun, your turn.
Yeah. I mean, the question I had was regarding Shlok 11. From the other shloks, what I could understand was that God is all encompassing and like all aspects are covered by the self. But so I didn't get the intent of the caveat in Shlok 11. What was the intent of this caveat? Like, why is God not the bal with the desire and with the rasa?
Actually,
Or with the raga.
Actually, thank you, because maybe this also should have been an answer to Upasana's question. So Bhagavan says that I am the strength in the strong, but the strength which has no desire and attachment. So he's qualifying that. So which means typically what Angulimala will use a strength, but he will use a strength to murder and plunder, correct? Buddha will use a strength, but he will use a strength to cause more peace and more learning and more prosperity and more shanti. So Bhagavan says, I'm with that Buddha strength, I'm not with Angulimala strength. That is what Bhagavan is saying. So Bhagavan is also telling us that, for you to ultimately realize, please change. And if you change and you become this, then you are. That's exactly, I think your question is in a way an answer to Upasana's question. So Bhagavan is actually qualifying.
So then what is, so what I understood was that everything is Brahman, right? Everything is covered by Brahman. So then even the bal of the Angulimala, right? That should also be Brahman, no? I mean, why is that not? So what is that if not Brahman?
So in the Apara Prakriti and Para Prakriti, Bhagavan talks about the higher and the lower nature, right? And he classifies two levels. The way we can understand this is that even within the lower nature, we also should learn as human beings too, and our scriptures actually teach us to do that. So he says that I emerge from Satvik, Satvik, Rajasic, Tamasic all come from me. All those natures come from me. That is what he says. But then Bhagavan also in the other portions of the Bhagavad Gita and otherwise encourages us to let go of Tamasic and Rajasic and become Satvik. So here the balam of yes, it's true that the balam of the the people with Kama and Raga is also ultimately that Brahman. Absolutely yes. But Bhagavan is here trying to wean the person away from that quality into the right path.
Got it. Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
See, it's also this. It reminds me of this movie, right? Oh my God! I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. Oh my.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Right? That Paresh Rawal's movie. Yeah, it's a beautiful movie, right? So, I mean, that dridata in non-belief, but see, you can't call that person a non-believer. The person is a believer in anti. So, a believer is ultimately a believer. Any other thoughts or comments?
See, in the 7th sloka, the blessed Lord says, "My sarvamidam prodam sutre manidana eva." In the year 1977, I had the opportunity to listen to Swami Ranganathananda, the president of Ramakrishna Mutt, 1977. He, in one word, used to summarize this sloka, "My sarvamidam prodam," as, "In me lies the whole world like pearls threaded in a garland." In me lies the whole world like pearls threaded in a garland. Then along with this, he used to quote chapter 12, 15th sloka. That is, "Yasman uddijate loko, lokam uddijate chehe," which means, even though in me lies the whole world like pearls threaded in a garland, Yasman uddijate loko, lokam uddijate means neither you should be frightened by the world, nor you should frighten the world. In the year 1977, I think I was about 27 years old. These two stanzas of the Holy Bhagavad Gita, and this is what he says is the summary of Bhagavad Gita. In me lies the whole world like pearls threaded in a garland. Second is, neither terrorize anyone nor be afraid of anyone. In my Yasman uddichyate loko, lokam uddichyate cheha. And for about 1 hour he spoke. At that time I couldn't understand. At that time those were the days of, Bobby cinema and Sangam and all this. So without listening and understanding, I was sitting. But today when I listen to your Mai Sarvamidam Prodam Sutre Manidana Eva, I remembered my old thoughts. I'm sorry, I'm an old man, so I live in my past. You are all modern fellows. You are Federer man, whereas I am a Ramanathan Krishnan man. That is how life goes on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. It's not Manidana, it is Manigana.
Oh, that is what I learned at that time. I am not Srinivasacharya. I am only Srinivasan.
Thank you.
I would just like to say one thing, that why does he always say that I'm old school thought kinds of thing? Just because, I mean, we are also in the learning stage, no? So we are all equal here. I mean, in the sense of trying to learn things. We are all students.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, I have come to a stage where I realize that majority of the population thinks I am old school. I'm sure Upasana same is with you. So
No, I don't think.
Gita is never old school. Talking about Bhagavad Gita is never old school.
absolutely.
It is 5,000 years old, but still it is new.
Absolutely.
And we need it in our daily life.
What is 80 on 5,000? Nothing.
Yeah, that's what we hear. So, I mean, very old, but still very relevant in our day-to-day life.
Right. True.
So I respect that person who is saying I'm old. There's nobody old here. All of us are students of Bhagavad Gita.
Any other thought? Thank you, everyone. Hari Om. We'll meet next Saturday. We'll continue with this chapter 7.